A very good morning to you and welcome to the St. Lucia House of Assembly, where the Parliament is meeting for the first time in 2023, the new year. A happy new year to you. There's only one motion before the House today, and that is that Parliament do advise the Cabinet of Ministers to consider and approve the recommendations presented by the Review Committee for the completion and commissioning of the St. Jude Hospital to facilitate the move and transfer of operations from the George Odlum National Stadium to the original St. Jude Hospital site.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the King, the public weal, peace and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all evermore. Amen.
Good morning, members, and Happy New Year to each and every one of you. I beg to announce that His Excellency, the Acting Governor General, has been pleased to assent the Virtual Assets Bill, Business Bill. And members, you would have been aware of the passing of former House Speaker, served 2004 to 2006, and Member of Parliament for Soufrière Fort-Saint-Jacques, 1987 to 1992, Joseph Baden-Allen, passed away. His body lay in state on Wednesday, the 11th of January, 2023, and his funeral followed later in the day. In his honor, the Parliament building's flag was flown at half-mast from the date of his passing to the date of his funeral. I also wish to advise, since we last met over the last week, Sunday the 8th, the former Prime Minister and member for Vieux-Fort South celebrated his birthday. And last week, Friday, not the most auspicious date, the 13th, our Attorney General celebrated his birthday. Members have also received correspondence from the member for Labrie advising that he is out of state on official business. And I ask you to join with me in welcoming a very special guest, an illustrious son of the soil, who went on to overseas and made us proud, first becoming a judge and then a senior judge in the Eastern District of Canada, which in effect is the Chief Justice of that province, and is now a distinguished visiting professor at Ryerson University. I ask you to welcome my special guest, the Honorable Gregory Regis, originally from the village of Dennery. Statements from ministers. The Minister for Commerce.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, today I'm going to make a statement on the Soufriere Regional Development Foundation. Mr. Speaker, members may recall that on the 1st of February 2022, I made a statement on the foundation and promised this august body that I will make a subsequent statement. Mr. Speaker, prior to the 2021 general election in St. Lucia, there was a public outcry in Soufriere against alleged mismanagement and misconduct at the Soufriere Regional Development Foundation, as well as persistent allegations of corrupt practices by its board. As a St. Lucia Labour Party candidate for Soufriere-Fauchejacques in the 2021 election, I understood that when this organization was established, it was created with the sole purpose to develop the people of Soufriere-Fauchejacques, and that it could not serve the needs of our people if it was not financially viable. I therefore pledge that in keeping with my party's policy of good governance and anti-corruption, these allegations would be investigated and good governance returned to the foundation if I was elected to office. Following my election as a parliamentary representative for Soufriere-Fauchejacques, through the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister with responsibility for finance, I ensured the appointment of a new board for the SRDF, drawn from a cross-section of the Soufriere constituency and consisting of persons with the necessary background, experience, and vision to administer the affairs of the board. In addition, a forensic audit and governance and management review on the operations of the SRDF from 2016 to 2021 was launched. Mr. Speaker, it is now my duty to inform the public and the people of Soufriere in particular that a forensic audit and governance and management review have now been completed, and that the auditors have submitted their report. That report has highlighted corruption and mismanagement at the Soufriere Regional Development Foundation during the period 2016 to 2019. Mr. Speaker, the auditors found that the board of directors of the SRDF failed to govern the SRDF and allowed for effective management of the organization in keeping with best practices and the provisions of the Companies Act of 1966 of St. Lucia. This resulted in several fraudulent activities and illegalities, leading to a combined misappropriation and loss of approximately EC $1.5 million, therefore placing the foundation in a perilous financial position. I have consequently ensured that the report has been presented to the current board of the SRDF and to the Attorney General for the necessary consequential action.
Papers to be laid. Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Development, Youth Economy, Justice and National Security.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statute Instrument number 200 of 2022, District Courts, Electronic Litigation, Filing and Service Procedure Rules. Statute Instrument number 201 of 2022, Public Finance Management Act, Resolution of Parliament to borrow for capital and current expenditure to finance safety nets for vulnerable populations affected by COVID-19. Statute Instrument number 202 of 2022, Public Finance Management Act. Resolution of Parliament to borrow for capital and current expenditure to support micro, small and medium enterprise sector post-COVID-19. Statute Instrument number 24A of 2022, Public Finance Management Act. Resolution of Parliament to borrow for capital and current expenditure to provide budgetary support for the fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Statute Instrument number 210 of 2022, Fiscal Incentives, 3 to 9 Heavy Industries Incorporated Order. Statute Instrument number 217 of 2022, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, number 17 Order. Statute Instrument number 218 of 2022, Fiscal Incentives Eden Herbs Limited Amendment Order. Statute Instrument number 219 of 2022, International Business Companies Declaration of Head Office Company, Sandals Resort Management Limited Order. Statute Instrument number 1 of 2023, Legal Professional Eligibility, Frank Edward Wallen Order. Statute Instrument number 3 of 2023, Customs Service Charge Amendment of Schedule Order. Statute Instrument number 6 of 2023, Excise Tax Amendment of Schedule 1, number 1 Order. Statute Instrument number 8 of 2022, Companies Amendment Regulations. Report of the Chief Elections Officer on the general election held on July 26, 2021. Final report and recommendations. It's a Jude Hospital reconstruction project.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Tourism, Investment, Creative Industries, Culture and Information.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument number 213 of 2022, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Pura Vida Chateau Order. Statutory Instrument number 214 of 2022, Tourism Incentives, Quincy Griffith Order. Statutory Instrument number 215 of 2022, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Four Pillars Limited Order. Statutory Instrument number 205 of 2022, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Sunrod Property Inc. Order. Statutory Instrument number 206 of 2022, Tourism Incentives, Divine Tropical Boutique Resort and Spa Order. Statutory Instrument 207 of 2022, Tourism Incentives, Serenity on the Green Order. Statutory Instrument number 208 of 2022, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Cap Maison Management Limited Order. Statutory Instrument number 209 of 2022, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Divine Tropical Boutique and Spa Order. Statutory Instrument number 211 of 2022, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Golf Park 124 Limited Order. Statutory Instrument number 212 of 2022, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, Stonefield Limited Order. Statutory Instrument number 222 of 2022, Citizenship by Investment Amendment number 2, Regulations. Statutory Instrument number 4 of 2023, Data Protection Act, Commencement Order. Statutory Instrument number 7 of 2023, Tourism Stimulus and Investment, the Nehemiah Moore Order. And on behalf of the Minister of External Affairs, International Trade, Civilization and Diaspora Affairs, Statutory Instrument number 2 of 2023, Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Agreement, Amendment of Schedule Order.
Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for housing and local government.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument number 203 of 2022, St. Lucia National Housing Corporation, Larry Schultz Viewfort number 4, vesting order. Statutory Instrument number 204 of 2022, St. Lucia National Housing Corporation, Larry Schultz Viewfort number 5, vesting order.
Minister for Commerce, Manufacturing, Business Development, Cooperatives and Consumer Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay the following papers appearing in my name. Statutory Instrument number 216 of 2022, Price Control Amendment Number 22, Order. Statutory Instrument Number 220 of 2022, Price Control Amendment Number 23, Order. Statutory Instrument Number 221 of 2022, Price Control Amendment Number 24, Order. And Statutory Instrument Number 5 of 2023, Price Control Amendment Number 1, Order.
Motions, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Development, the Youth Economy, Justice and National Security. The podium, please.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name, that the Parliament of St. Lucia acknowledges receipt of the report of the St. Jude Hospital Reconstruction Project Review Committee, hereinafter referred to as the Review Committee, and expresses its profound thanks and gratitude to the members of the Review Committee for their sterling contribution, diligence, and selfless dedication in completing the report. That the Parliament of St. Lucia do advise the Cabinet of Ministers to consider and approve the recommendation presented by the Review Committee for the completion and commissioning of the St. Jude Hospital to facilitate the move and transfer of operations from the George Odlum National Stadium to the original St. Jude Hospital site. That the Parliament of St. Lucia do advise the Cabinet of Ministers to explore other sustainable opportunities for the St. Jude Hospital site. That the Parliament of St. Lucia, cognizant of the distressing conditions of the St. Jude Hospital at the George Odlum National Stadium, further expresses its profound gratitude to the doctors, nurses, staff, and patients for their contribution, dedication, patience, and commitment over the years. Mr. Speaker, before I begin my contribution to this debate, I crave your indulgence to do the following. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, permit me to extend a sincere apology on behalf of the government of St. Lucia to every St. Lucian who has been affected directly or indirectly by the unavailability of a functioning and modern St. Jude Hospital over the past 13 years. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I wish also to apologize to the devoted and resilient staff of St. Jude, who has turned up for work day in and day out over the past 13 years in the extremely challenging conditions at the George Odlum Stadium. Despite these difficult conditions, they continue to do their best to save the lives of all entrusted to their care. I say to them that the depth of gratitude St. Lucia owes them cannot be measured and can never be repaid. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, I wish to apologize to every individual, community group, and business, as well as the governments of Taiwan, Australia, Mexico, Germany, Israel, and India, who responded to St. Lucia's plea for help to rebuild St. Jude Hospital after the fire. The government understands the disappointment that they must feel at the fact that a modern St. Jude is still not a reality, and what they went through in the last 5 years in particular. I want to say simply but sincerely that we are sorry, and I wish to assure them that while my administration continues to hold their trust, we'll do everything we can do to end the nightmare experience with St. Jude Hospital and to ensure that it is never repeated. Mr. Speaker, why was the St. Jude Hospital not completed after the fire of 2009? During that fire, Mr. Speaker, there were 47 patients at the hospital. There were 3 deaths. And I want again to express my condolences to those who lost their life during the fire. Mr. Speaker, work started in the hospital in 2010. And the work continued, Mr. Speaker. It continued even after 2011, when the people of St. Lucia, as they did in July 26, changed the government, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, one would ask, why didn't the government not continue work in the hospital? And apart from the fact that we know of the callous nature of that government, we do not see it, we could not find a reason why. But, Mr. Speaker, the truth always prevails. And I was looking at Hansard on the 13th of February 2018 and a contribution from the Honorable Prime Minister at that time. And here is what he said, and I quote, Hansard, 13 February 2018. The Honorable Member for Mico South, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Growth, Job Creation, External Affairs, and the Public Service. And now that these titles have dwindled to the member for Mico South. So we have St. Jude, in which the opposition matched. When they were in opposition, they claimed that we are taking too long to open up St. Jude. And at the time, we are talking about 9 months to 1 year of recommendations of works. They came in, and for 5 years, you know, Madam Speaker, the fact is, you can't hide the facts. Right at the gates of St. Jude, I think that St. Peter was there, normally praying, blaspheming. So you cannot change what the facts are. It is not a fact that the building was unfinished when they came in, and it's not a fact that the money was there in order to be able to finance the buildings. And what happened after 5 years? The amount of money went from 40 million to 40 million to 60 million. And in fact, there are letters all over to say that finally the hospital was going to open in August 2016. Actually, sorry, not August, in July of 2016. And the member was right. We stopped the project just at the beginning of July because we realized that the project was not even close to be completed, was not even close to be completed. And it continues. Now, anybody who has any sense of common sense would say, let me see what your plans are. Let me see what your schedules are for construction. And when is it we realistically believe that this was going to be finished? There was no such plans. And I want you, Mr. Speaker, to listen to that. There were no such plans. That's what the member from Mico South said. So, in realizing that there were no such plans, Cabinet felt it was prudent to be able to hire a consultant to come in. And who the consultant was, as is my style, I will not mention anybody's name. And I go further. But the same solution company that we want to be able to protect, but the other side, it is okay when it's convenient to do so. It is not when it's reality. So all of a sudden, now, you have a hospital in which the report says, remember, she said previously, there was no report. So all of a sudden, you have a hospital in which the report says that there is $50 million of quantifiable expenditure. So based on the physical work on the ground and all the inventory and of all the items and the container. In fact, 2 containers just arrived yesterday or just last week, and that had been in Canada for 2 years in the dock. And the report says that there is expenditures, his words, of disbursements of 118 million. That is why government now has gone to the next step, because it does not want to be the person making this allegation without evidence. And so we have taken the precaution of hiring Price Waterhouse to be able to do a financial audit to determine where the 118 million gone. Price Waterhouse, so that the taxpayers of St. Lucia never knew that Price Waterhouse was hired to perform an audit on St. Jude. Never revealed to the taxpayers of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. And we speak about transparency and who was not revealing what report about who. But just to say, and listen to the instructive words, Mr. Speaker. But just to say, and here's why he's not continuing it. But just to say that we are going to continue a flawed project for the sake of meeting your mandate, of which you had 5 years to achieve, which you did not achieve, is not what is going to work on this side. He did not complete the hospital because we are just to say that we are going to continue to achieve a flawed project for the sake of meeting your mandate, of which you had 5 years to achieve, which you did not achieve, is not what is going to work. So in spite of the $1 million, the millions of dollars that were spent, just for him not to continue a project so that he could not continue the mandate of the government at the time, Mr. Speaker. So we found why the project was not continued. Pure political retribution. So you allow the people of the country to suffer. You allow $118 million to remain on the ground because you do not want to follow the mandate of the last government. But Mr. Speaker, it goes on. Remember, the words of Hansard, there were no reports, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, listen to that. An audit was commissioned Mr. Speaker, at a cost of $1 million. So that's one investigation. Then, you know, they hired Price Waterhouse to do a financial audit. No cost for that. Not how much it costs. None of these reports, Mr. Speaker, have been tabled or have been made public. None of these reports have been tabled in the Honorable House or have been made public, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, here is what we know. What we know, Mr. Speaker, is that in 2016, all the main buildings had been significantly completed with roofs. And I say roofs, Mr. Speaker, because I'm going to back to a story of roofs. And I want you to remember why I said roofs. I said these buildings had continued and there were roofs on them. Note, Mr. Speaker, there were roofs on these buildings. And I'm going to come back to roofs as time goes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there was a handover report which was never made public, Mr. Speaker. And the handover report came from the people who were working at St. Jude Hospital, not prepared by politicians, not prepared by members of parliament coming in this house and postulating and making a big fuss of things they don't know about, plain engineer. It was a report by professionals, Mr. Speaker. It was called the St. Jude Hospital Reconstruction Report, Mr. Speaker. That was never made public. The public never knew that in 2016, August 2016, there was a report about the conditions that existed at St. Jude in the unfinished buildings, which I'm going to refer to now, Mr. Speaker, as the original St. Jude's. There was a report. What was in the report, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, there was a project manager, there was a project steering committee made up of only civil servants. Absolutely no politicians. Only civil servants were involved, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, the report clearly states, Mr. Speaker, the funding for the buildings in stage 1. The funding for the buildings, Mr. Speaker. It says $41 million worth of grants and donations. $41 million worth of grants and donations, Mr. Speaker. And these were received before March 2020. They were deposited with the Accountant General. And after 2020, they were deposited in a project account at the Bank of St. Lucia. That is clear in the report, Mr. Speaker. $41 million was collected and it was deposited in the Bank of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the report also says that the hospital was funded by a $20 million US dollar grant in US dollar loan in January 2015, of which 50% was disbursed. So you have $41 million worth of grants and $10 million US dollars worth of loan, which was negotiated in 2015, and which 50% of that loan was disbursed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and the report clearly states, so when they pretend that they were not aware of how much money was spent in the first phase, Mr. Speaker, the report clearly states the total project expenditure up to financial year of 26 and 2017, period ended July 31st, 2016, was certified by the accounts and verified, was $98,451,346.85. That was the project expenditure on the original St. Jude site. Clearly taken. So when you go around, they go around, Mr. Speaker, with the propaganda and the false audits and the false information that they did not know how much money was spent. And, Mr. Speaker, they knew how much money was spent because it was clear in another report, which they had. But in their normal style of flashing mirrors and trying to deceive the people of St. Lucia, they refused to tell the people of St. Lucia that $98 million was spent on the original buildings, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we go in further. What did the report say? The report said that there were challenges because the money was the job was done in components, difficult to implement, and they also said that the money did not come like in one tranche. It came in bits and pieces. It came from grants. The Mexicans gave a grant, the Indians gave a grant, etc. So it came in bits and pieces, Mr. Speaker. So the funding was inadequate and it was inconsistent, Mr. Speaker. The report clearly outlines the issues, challenges, and constraints. Very clear. Nothing to hide. It clearly outlined what were the issues in the original St. Jude Hospital. Clearly outlined, Mr. Speaker. Clearly. Any government or any Minister of Finance who really has the interest of the people at heart would take that report, give it to his consultants or his people, and say, look at these challenges and see how we can redeem them, Mr. Speaker. And the reason why I say that, Mr. Speaker, because this is not the only report that the government had in its possession that could deal with the situation in the original buildings. There's another report which they had. So they spent the $1 million, and they have another report which I will speak to in a few moments, Mr. Speaker. So the plane of I do not know, and we had nothing. We don't know what was happening there, and this and that, and the corridors were too small. All these things, Mr. Speaker, all these things, what was wrong was outlined in that report. Mr. Speaker, the report also lists the outstanding issues for action. Very clearly, it speaks about the outstanding payments for processing. It speaks about the status of all works by all contractors, status of works by subcontractors, statement of procurement of materials and supplies from nominated suppliers, status of storage of procured material and supplies, statement of payments made per contractor, suppliers under all contracts, status of technical support provided to UNOPS. All that was clearly outlined, and the information was available to the government if they were acting in good faith and really wanted to continue St. Jude and did not want to keep the people of the South in the situation that they were in, Speaker. It was clear. Mr. Speaker, this is one report. Fast forward to July 2026, when the people of St. Lucia decided, as they did in July 26, 2021. Talk about July. Fast forward, Mr. Speaker. When the government came into power in 2016, Mr. Speaker, they had another report. There was another report. And that report is called the St. Jude Hospital Reconstruction Project. Reconstruction of the west and east wings, surgical building and ancillary buildings at St. Jude. Another handover status report by the consultants. I want to listen carefully, Mr. Speaker. Two reports. One by the Project Management Committee and another by the consultants, the people who are directly involved in it, Mr. Speaker. It was dated 11th July 2016, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, this report is even more, this report has a lot more detail, Mr. Speaker. A lot more detail. Information which they had. Information which they could act upon, Mr. Speaker. Listen to what's in that report. Mr. Speaker, listen, no wonder you have all these accusations and threats and trying to pull the wool over the eyes of the people and speaking about a box that is 70% complete. No one ever said or saw that, Mr. Speaker. Listen to what the report says. The report says, work status, the status of the buildings. 2, snagging of buildings and infrastructure status. What that report says is all the snags that were in the St. Jude, the original St. Jude, what are they? So all you have to do is go in and look at the report and look at the snags and fix them up. And it also says how you can fix the snags. The report says so. It says in any construction project, particularly large construction projects of that nature, there are going to be snags. And how it has been built, it will have more snags because the finance was inadequate. It wasn't coming. It had to come in pieces. It has all the snags listed, Mr. Speaker, are all the snags in these original buildings and how they can be fixed. All of them. Meantime, Mr. Speaker, if a government is serious and the government is not vindictive and callous, that they will leave these buildings from 2016 to 2019 for bush, for animals, for bats, for rats. And you have a report that says exactly what's wrong? Mr. Speaker, the people of St. Lucia must ensure that these people never get back in the power in St. Lucia. Because this is absolute wickedness, Mr. Speaker. It's wicked, it's callous, Mr. Speaker. You have a report that tells you all what is wrong with the buildings. All what's wrong. It doesn't say the buildings are perfect. It's called a snag report. It also tells you, Mr. Speaker, the activity status, the activities, what is going on when and how you have to deal with it. The activities, you have that in a report by the consultant that's been paid. You know it. It also has approval status. I heard one of them say that there was no DC approval. It clearly states the approval status. At what point we're in negotiations with the DCA, and the letters are there. The letters are there. They have the letters. They say they can bring letters that put them in more trouble. The letters are there about the DCA, but they pretend to ignore it because they did not know that on 26 July we will have that report of the general elections, 26 July. So they thought that they would cover it up, leave it covered, and then, of course, I must win. This guy can never beat me. And they would have another 5 years to cover it up, Mr. Speaker. But no, the people of St. Lucia thought differently. And that is what is difficult for them to accept, that the people of St. Lucia thought differently. So you have this report, Mr. Speaker. It speaks about the approval status. What is the rate of approval in the negotiations with DCA? All the letters to DCA are there. What is even more significant, it speaks to the drawings issued status. All the drawings that were sent to the DCA, it reports on where they are and at what stage they are with the negotiation of DCA. The drawing status, Mr. Speaker. And listen to it, listen to that, Mr. Speaker. The report also speaks about the procured items in storage and their status. Mr. Speaker, I hope the people of St. Lucia are listening, Mr. Speaker. You know, so when they took the SSU, and I asked the Commissioner of Police, please, I need a report on that raid. Yes. When they took the SSU and put it on people's trucks and used political operatives and went to invade people's houses, they had a document that said exactly where everything was. You lie. I lie? There was a document that said exactly where everything was, Mr. Speaker. A document is listed where everything was. Mr. Speaker, I won't bore you in telling you where it was, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, what is even more depressing and distressing is the things that these guys found, you know. Is what they found, Mr. Speaker. In what was procured and what you paid for, Mr. Speaker. Windows, storage tanks, cabinets. Mr. Speaker, it's really medical equipment and furniture. Medical equipment and furniture, Mr. Speaker. All of these things. All these things the guys found there, Mr. Speaker. Intercom system. Paint, windows, doors, all these things, Mr. Speaker, were found. All these things were there, listed, and their locations identified. All of it was there, Mr. Speaker. Coming to you just now. There were heavy-duty wall faucets. There were, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that's not a joke, Mr. Speaker. It's not a joke. That's $98 million, and they talk about the roads now. That is $98 million that was available. It's not, Mr. Speaker, these things are not, they always want to accuse people, Mr. Speaker, accuse people of all kinds of things. And, Mr. Speaker, these are not things Philip JPS says, you know. These are documented. Water fittings, Mr. Speaker, if that wasn't so serious, you can do two things, either laugh or cry. Mr. Speaker, when I cry, my crying is serious and real, Mr. Speaker. I don't cry on demand. Mr. Speaker, you mean to tell me, a people who are suffering in a stadium, nurses and doctors who are giving human service in that stadium, you leave them there because you want to pay, because you don't want to follow the mandate of the last government, because of their flawed projects. You allow them to suffer, Mr. Speaker, when you have when you have a document, Mr. Speaker, that says exactly what you have to do, it also says where all the materials are. It says how much money you spend. It says everything. All you have to do is take the document, call the consultants, let us talk, and fix up the snags. The snags that were identified by your audits, they were identified. If you look at the snag reports, you will see it was identified already. There was no need to pay anybody any $1 million. It was identified already, Mr. Speaker. But you know, what you're looking for is to be vindictive. What you're looking for is to punish somebody. What you're looking for is to create political retribution. That's what you're looking for. So you have a report that already says what the snags are, but you will do another one. But Mr. Speaker, as the old people say, Bodier ka couché, il pas dormi. Listen to what the report says. After you pay, Mr. Speaker, I never, in all my political career, which has been very successful, whether they like it or not, due to the people of Kashusis. With the help of the people of Kashusis, I'm a 6-star general. And whether they like it or not, the next time I'm going to be a 7-star general. And that is what they can't understand. That's what they cannot take. That's what hurting them, Mr. Speaker. I never had to maneuver to win any seat or to maneuver myself and pay this and pay that. I went into the constituency. I worked hard. I convinced the people of Cashews East. And regardless of what they do, regardless of what they write, the people of Cashews East will always support Philip J. Pierre, whether they like it or not. And if they don't like it, let them pull it in the pipe and smoke it, Mr. Speaker. And my party has never had an injunction against me. The last election, my party nominated me 250 against 0. And I'm proud of my party. I'm very proud of my party, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. And I'm coming back to after they paid that money for the inquiry. Listen to what their own report says. Their own report says, somewhat. Listen to what their own report says. Their own report says, we do see a great value present in the works completed to date and believe the project is salvageable and could be converted into a facility that can properly serve the needs of St. Lucia. What? The report, listen, don't defend that. Please, the report is the report that I don't want to mention the company's name. You know well. In fact, you might know. Excuse me. You see, you were quiet. You get involved in that. Don't get involved in that. Do not get involved in that. That's above your pay grade. You signed the injunction? I see you signed something. I see you signed something about a meeting. You signed it? Huh? Yeah, the technical report you pay $1 million for. I just don't, you see, Mr. Member for Shows, since you asked me, I don't want to come and call people's names. That's my problem. So, Mr. Speaker, I have given you two reports. One for handover, and another one from the consultant, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, where were we, Mr. Speaker, and what was the human and financial cost of that folly? What was the human and financial cost of that folly, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, the United Workers' Party administration, instead of completing what was already there, decided to throw all logic to the wind and begin the construction of an entirely new hospital. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to outline to you what was found according to the report of the committee, Mr. Speaker. And look at the difference between them and us. Look at the difference, Mr. Speaker. We got a committee of professionals. We didn't pay them 1 cent. For love of country. Now, don't get me wrong. I have no problem with paying consultants. No problem. That they work, they go to school. Apart from the propaganda that you're spreading about me, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, let's leave that alone. Mr. Speaker, I have consulted for CARICOM. I've consulted for the Caribbean Development Bank. I've consulted for the OECS. Some of the biggest businesses in St. Lucia, I've consulted for them, Mr. Speaker. I've consulted for governments in the region, Mr. Speaker. When I was 21 years, I had a bachelor's degree and honors degree, Mr. Speaker. But the party that the member from Microsoft leads, he has them on their fake profiles saying I have a certificate in bookkeeping. But Mr. Speaker, the challenge is, I will come into the Honorable House and I will show all my certificates. And I challenge anybody to bring and show all their certificates. Mr. Speaker, if I'm leader of a party and these gentlemen and ladies in my party are spreading deliberate falsehoods, I will have the fortitude, I will have the integrity to tell them, do not say that, it is not true. Mr. Speaker, I want to just go very quickly, Mr. Speaker. You see, Mr. Speaker, allow me, Mr. Speaker, talking about integrity and talking about spoiling people's good name. Talk about, Mr. Speaker, I want, just give me 5 minutes, Mr. Speaker, to deal with an issue, a personal issue, Mr. Speaker, an issue that I take very, very seriously. You see, Mr. Speaker, I have worked all my life with the support of my parents to protect my integrity and my good name. That's all I have. I've worked all my life, Mr. Speaker. And when a party that is led by a gentleman who knows better, who should know better, but because of his lust for power, encourages these things, Mr. Speaker, I must call them out. Mr. Speaker, you heard on their fake profile that some businessman gave me a BMW as a gift, that I was involved in corruption and I got a gift of a BMW, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, you must look at how these people insult you. You must look at the insults, Mr. Speaker. You must look at the insult you and how they believe that you cannot have what other people can have once they work for it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's a fellow called Champagne who have a BMW. I don't know about that. Mr. Speaker, but look at me and my BMW, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what I've driven. In fact, that's not it. You're laughing because I borrowed money from you to buy it. You remember that, right? Mr. Speaker, in April 2021, I applied to the government to purchase a vehicle because of the concessions that were given at the time, Mr. Speaker. I bought my vehicle from M Motors. It's a white BMW 321 right-hand drive, Mr. Speaker. My vehicle costs, the listed price of this unit is $215,000. And because of the duty-free concession, I got it for $131,111.11. I paid 12.5% VAT, which is $16,208.99, and the total price was $147,500. And at the time, Mr. Speaker, I'd made somebody pay for the tongue. You know, and they're not learning. They're learning. They're still coming after me. They're not learning. I made somebody pay for his tongue, and I got $40,000. On April 14th, 2021. Now, somebody that I beat the elections twice, I really beat them, made him pay. I made him pay for his tongue, Mr. Speaker. So I went to Fix and I borrowed $102,414.29. For that, Mr. Speaker, I have a promissory note from Fix, Mr. Speaker, signed on the 14th of April 2021, and there are the loan conditions, Mr. Speaker. An amortized loan, interest 6.25, monthly installment $1,119.90.50, and I signed by the people at the financial institution on the 14th April 2021. For that, Mr. Speaker, I pay the bank $1,190 per month. That's the story of my BMW. I defy them to give the story of the houses. Give the story. I defy them. Anytime they challenge me, I'll come and give the story. Anytime. And some people say, don't do that, that's politician. No. You must stop trying to spoil people's name with no evidence, Mr. Speaker. Then goes, so Mr. Speaker, I thank you for allowing me that time, Mr. Speaker. Because anytime they do that, anytime, Mr. Speaker, I will challenge them. Now the house at Cap Estate, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you something. What is wrong if I own a house at Cap Estate? But you sold land for $1 per square foot to foreigners. What is wrong? I don't own any house at Cap Estate. I do not. I have never. But even though I own a house at Cap, what's wrong with that? Why can't I own a house in Cap Estate? Why? Won't I work for it? Rodney Bay only good for you, not for me. But I'm proud not to be at Cap Estate and live in Castries North. When I go and vote this time, I'll vote for him. No? Yes, okay, I forget that, yeah. I voted blue the last time. When, Mr. Speaker, so I'm proud, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud. So I don't have any house in Cap Estate. But, Mr. Speaker, what they believe is only a certain type of people must live in Cap Estate. Only a certain type. Only a certain pedigree. And that is why they said to an investor, a member head is not the right pedigree to control that kind of business. That is what they want, Mr. Speaker. And what hurts me the most, is there are liquor victims, according to George Odlum, who follow this foolishness just because of self-hate. Mr. Speaker, it's a serious psychological problem. It's a problem that goes on to history, how we hate ourselves, and we do not like to see people like us advance, Mr. Speaker. They think that we have a ceiling. There's only a ceiling we can reach, and anything above that ceiling is not for us. And that's why you all the nonsense, the Prime Minister say from Marshall, nonsense, because of that self-hate, Mr. Speaker. But you see the men and women on this side? The men and women on this side, Mr. Speaker, all of us love our people, love our country, and love ourselves. So we want the best for our people, our country, and ourselves, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, let them come again. Come again, Mr. Speaker. And the people who support that, people who know better, people who would never been looked at before, but right now, because it's politically convenient for them, Mr. Speaker, they play like they're supporting that foolishness, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, back to St. Jude and the sufferings of the people of St. Lucia. So, Mr. Speaker, we find ourselves in a situation in July 2021, Mr. Speaker. And that committee was formed, Mr. Speaker. That committee was formed, and that committee was asked to report to the government. It was formed in October 2022, Mr. Speaker, September, and it reported in October 2021, and it reported in November 2021, Mr. Speaker. And between that time, between 2017 and 2019, in these original buildings, Mr. Speaker, the buildings were deserted, bush grew on it, it was infested by rats, animals roamed it, Mr. Speaker, and they destroyed 2 buildings. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, 2 buildings that were already constructed were bulldozed like the custody suites. Bulldozed, Mr. Speaker. You mean to tell me in a country, a poor country like St. Lucia, a country where you complain about the roads now and fix the roads and reduce the cost of living and you're making money on gas, you've destroyed 2 buildings worth $7 million? And up to this day, the people of St. Lucia have not been told why these 2 buildings were destroyed, but with $7 million poorer, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, remember I told you that there was procured equipment that was available and that was purchased by the people of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, you know, between 2016 and 2021, that government did not even try to secure these items. Mr. Speaker, they allow it to rot. They allow it to Mr. Speaker, while people are suffering in St. Jude, while people are in pain, you have a surgical ward, you have stuff that you purchase, you allow it to rot, Mr. Speaker? You leave it in containers to rot just because you want to pay political retribution, Mr. Speaker? So, there's a report done. When I came into government, Mr. Speaker, what I always do, one of my greatest strengths is my patience. What we did, whilst they're talking, 70% complete, this is not complete, Mr. Speaker, we were working. So we caused an inventory to be done on the materials that they left behind. Now, Mr. Speaker, listen to that. We did not, the inventory was done by somebody who was working with them. Because we don't want, you see, this thing is serious business. This is millions of dollars involved, Mr. Speaker. So we don't get involved in any witch hunt or any hanky-panky. Somebody who was working with them was asked to do the inventory, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it will hurt your heart. It will hurt your heart, Mr. Speaker, to see the inventory that was left to rot. That was left in containers. Things that could be used, Mr. Speaker, left to rot. Windows, tiles, pumps, a tank. Hundreds of items. Nearly hundreds of items, Mr. Speaker, for the hospital was allowed to rot and remain in a container because this government, the government at the time, wanted to practice political retribution. They did not want the people of St. Lucia to be in St. Jude only because St. Jude was being constructed by the government of the St. Lucia Labour Party. The only reason why. So they allowed the inventory, and I challenge them to say that that's not true. The inventory, apart from you damage 2 buildings, you bulldoze them, $7 million. You have millions of dollars of inventory you're allowed to rot and you're allowed to spoil, Mr. Speaker, because you want to practice political retribution. The doors, windows, medical equipment, Mr. Speaker, you allow it to rot in the containers. You left it in containers to rot. You knew it was there. Because the first report from the consultants told you where it was. They told you what was there. And they told you you allow it to rot, Mr. Speaker. And now, we are still trying to salvage part of it, but we may have to throw it away. Millions of dollars of equipment. Millions of dollars of equipment, Mr. Speaker. You allow it to rot. Mr. Speaker, so what did the committee recommend, Mr. Speaker? The committee recommended that we should not continue work in the second phase, which I'm going to refer to now as the box. So, the first phase and the box. The committee recommended that we do not continue the box, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, listen to the irony of the box. The irony of the box, Mr. Speaker, and my colleagues will go into more detail. I'm just going to give just a tip of the iceberg and wait for them. Wait for the rebuttal. Just the rebuttal, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the box. At July 2021, Mr. Speaker, between February 2019 and July 2021, $118 million was spent on the box. And that figure is not what I say, is what the Ministry of Economic Development, they are the ones who said it. $118 million, Mr. Speaker, on the box alone. But the box, remember I told you about roofs. I came back just now. Out of that, Mr. Speaker, they spent $89 million in cash. Now, when they tell you there was no money to complete the original St. Jude, let me tell you where they got the money and how the money was there. You see, Mr. Speaker, because they never knew they would be where they are today. So they thought they would be able to hide, cover up all that. And that's why they fainted when they lost. Because they never expected to be there. Because all these things were kept under the cover. And if we had lost the election, we probably may have never known, Mr. Speaker. So they are pretending that there was no money to complete the original St. Jude Hospital, Mr. Speaker. But let me tell you what. They spent $89.3 million. Let me tell you where they got the money from. $10 million loan, which is the same loan we took in October 2014, $10 million US loan, and a $20 million US loan in January 2020, Mr. Speaker. So they had $30 million worth of cash available to complete the original St. Jude. 30 million US, Mr. Speaker. And the balance they got from counterpart financing, from revenue from the state, Mr. Speaker. So, there was $89 million to complete the original St. Jude. $89 million. They didn't use it. They put it in the box. But that's not all what they spent on the box. That's not all they spent on the box, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there were receivables which I am paying now. I am paying now. We are paying it now. Because, Mr. Speaker, the last government, in practicing political retribution, sometimes refused to pay contractors who they believed were against them, Mr. Speaker. And now I have to pay the interest? No, I have to pay the interest. I have to pay the interest now because they're practicing political victimization. Don't pay that. Don't pay it. Don't pay it. That's what they did, Mr. Speaker. And now I have to pay it. And, Mr. Speaker, do you know that all the contracts that were given under the last government, we paid every month? We paid every month. We paid every month, Mr. Speaker, because we have obligations, Mr. Speaker. So, they He left us with $28.7 million worth of payables on the books. $28.74 million of payables on the books. And there's more to come. That's not all the payables. There are more payables behind. So, Mr. Speaker, and listen to the most revealing part of it. After they spent the $180 million, they still have money for the main consultant, the main contractor. But you heard one some time ago, he said, oh, it was OECD that had the contract to build the hospital. Mr. Speaker, I mean, Mr. Speaker, do you know that after they spent $118 million, they prepared a direct award on July 15th, 2021 for $70 million to be repaid in 1 year. The civil servants had the foresight to realize that was hot. So he sent it to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General decided, you see that? I'm not touching that. So it stayed there, and I saw it. $70 million. A week before election, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, you know, my colleague has asked me to do what? If I knew, I would tell you. But it's the terms, Mr. Speaker, the terms of that $70 million that is disturbing. So we stopped it. We said, no, that's not happening. So I told the Ministry of Economic Development to tell me how much money we owe on the box. You know how much money we owe on the box, Mr. Speaker? Another $36 million. And, Mr. Speaker, you see, Mr. Speaker, the same thing, let me get back to the same thing, because, you know, they always want to accuse people, the best financial managers, and peer down what's happening in the economy, and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you the conditions of that $70 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the finance cost was $6,653,811, making a grand total of $70,754 to be paid in 1 year. Interest 6.5%, Mr. Speaker. Listen to the clause that this Minister of Finance would put solutions through if the solutions didn't stop him. In case of late payments, any invoice submitted by the company, the client shall pay interest of 1% per day. To the company on the amount overdue. So, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance decided that he was not paying that. What? What? Yes, everything, comrade, everything I say, I make it available for you. And I want everything you say, make it available. Everything you want. You see, you want to know? I can give you the inventory report. I get everything you want. Everything you want. I don't read paper. I don't read things I don't see. I don't read blank sheets. Mr. Speaker. So you have $70 million. So we stopped it. We say we're not paying that. So I sent the ministry back to go and do a reconciliation. And they returned and saying that we owe that company $36 million. Construction company. After we spent 118 million, we still owe the company $36 million for work that they have done. 36 million, Mr. Speaker. Don't mumble under your breath. Say it loud. Stand up and tell me I'm wrong. $36 million plus $180 million is $154 million that was spent on the box. Now, Mr. Speaker, after you spend $154 million, listen to what is most significant, Mr. Speaker. You heard them say that they're building a state-of-the-art hospital that could be finished in 6 months. And they had a helicopter on top, helicopter pad, and and people would come and land their plane, state-of-the-art, finish the hospital, demonstration, finish the hospital. We allow the police, go and demonstrate, finish it. They would helicopter to land on it, and they would have Minister members listen to me instead. Because what I'm saying to you is much more important. So you spent $118 million, Mr. Speaker, and then $36 million you owe to a contractor. As is my style, I will not mention the contractor's name. That's $154 million, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, listen to that. Listen to that. At that time, the Ministry of Economic Development says it would mean that the government would have to spend $76.75 million more to complete the ground floor. The ground floor. To complete the ground floor. And it says the total funding required would be close to another $100 million. But Mr. Speaker, when they said so, there was certain stuff that they did not know. They never knew. They were assuming that the roof was complete. They were assuming that helicopters could land on top of it. And when the rain fell and we showed the water leaking inside, they said it was camera tricks, and that's not true. And look at the state of the art thing and something. That's what they were saying. They did not know, because they did not know they would lose the election. They didn't know that. But Mr. Speaker, when we look now, remember the box has no partitions. There is not one bed. There's nothing. Just a box. It's leaking. Now you say you're going to go in the ground floor. Eh? So you go have 6 people in the ground floor and people working upstairs. In a hospital. 70% complete. Eh? Not one partition, nothing. But Mr. Speaker, to make it worse, the roof wasn't completed. And Mr. Speaker, we asked the contractor to give us a quotation of how much it would cost to complete the roof. A building that was 60% completed, how much it would cost to complete the roof, Mr. Speaker? And Mr. Speaker, we were told that it would cost us $16 million to complete the roof. In addition, another $16 million, Mr. Speaker. So you have to add $16 million to that. So what they had there is actually $170 million. And I have to find $60 million because we have to protect it. Because if we don't protect it, the water will come in and all the cladding and will build these things. The report came from the contractor who we asked a quotation to. I don't want to mention his name. If you insist, I can do it. I want $16 million to complete the roof in a hospital. You say that's 60% complete, Mr. Speaker. $16 million. So in total, Mr. Speaker, the box with no partitions, no equipment, is $170 million. Mr. Speaker, you think that's right? In summary, Mr. Speaker, the cost of the box, $89.3 million spent from $10 million loan October 2014 and $20 million loan in January 2020 and counterpart financing from the revenue. That is $89 million. Payables, you owe people, I have a list, I can show if you want, of $28.7 million. You owe a contractor $36 million. That gives you a total of $154 million. Now, and you've also found that the roof is not complete. You have to spend $16 million to complete the roof in a hospital, you see, that was 60% complete. Total $170 million. But there is more, Mr. Speaker. More bills are coming. Bills for security services, $689,000. More bills come, Mr. Speaker. In a box. Some of you said I was 70% complete, Mr. Speaker. That's what you've told the people of St. Lucia. That this government is callous and Pierre don't know what he's doing. Complete the hospital. Complete it. You have no partitions, you have a roof that's leaking, you have no equipment, you have nothing, and you spent $170 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this, and that's it, Mr. Speaker. As per your request, please find attached our revised proposal for enclosure works, inclusive of insulating and waterproofing of concrete roofs for St. Jude's Hospital, the new main wing, the dialysis and physiotherapy buildings. The total estimated cost, inclusive of VAT, is $16,326,624.05. So, Mr. Speaker, this government, under the member from Microsoft as the Minister of Finance, caused taxpayers to put $170 million in a box, and where you need $100 million more to complete it. And he left some structures that were covered. That was his own report says that it could be completed as a hospital. He left it after he spent $89 million there. And we had equipment, we had fixtures, we had medical equipment to complete it. He left it. Left it for rats and rodents and bats and bush. He left it there because of his own words. Because of his own words, Mr. Speaker. His own words. You are going to continue a flood project for the sake of meeting your mandate. That's the reason why. For the sake of meeting your mandate, Mr. Speaker. He left it there, and the taxpayers of St. Lucia and the poor people of Viewfort and the South are in pain in the hospital, and you give them horses and tell them if they want to be Pearl of the Caribbean. You refuse to finish our hospital. You refuse to finish it. You refuse to give them proper health care. After you have a building that your own report says can be salvaged, you leave it like that, and you want to give them horses. You sell the land, $1 per square foot. You lease it for 99 years to live in a mirage, a horse racing mirage. You spend $15 million to build a road to facilitate an airport, Mr. Speaker, and there's going to be a debate on the airport too. Because you see, We are not going to hide anything. There is going to be a debate on the airport also, because that's a story St. Lucians must hear. Another story of recklessness, carelessness, etc. They'll hear a story. Because this mirage that financial managers and this and that that must be proven to be untrue. We're going to debate Human International Airport. And I want to assure the people of St. Lucia that we are going to complete here on International Airport. But we're going to debate it. And Mr. Speaker, finally, I've apologized to the people of St. Lucia for St. Jude. I want to tell them that every man and woman in this room, and every man and woman of goodwill, our motive, Mr. Speaker, our aim, our objective, which we will do at the soonest possible opportunity, is to move the people of St. Lucia from the George Odlum Stadium and put them in better conditions. That is our singular, most important mission and vision, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you. Again, I want to thank the nurses, doctors, medical staff for the work they put in, and the patients, Mr. Speaker, for what they are suffering because of selfishness, what they are suffering because of callousness, what they are suffering because of vindictiveness, what they are suffering because they don't want to follow the mandate of the party, what they are suffering because they do not want the people to believe that the Labour Party is the one who competed St. Jude. Because of that, Mr. Speaker, apart from being $170 million poorer, they lost the lives that may have been lost because of the situation at St. Jude, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure them that redemption is near, Mr. Speaker. And this government will complete St. Jude. We've started, Mr. Speaker, and let me tell you briefly what we've done. Mr. Speaker, when we decided, based on the advice of the review committee, that we will continue work on the regional side, they went on the page and they said that the Prime Minister said he'll just fence it. That's what they said. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister said, oh, why fence? The Prime Minister is just going to fence it. Let me tell you what he's done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I want you, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you go to the south still. I want you, Mr. Speaker, when you visit the member for Choiseul, on your way, instead of passing on the west coast, passing on the east coast. But Mr. Speaker, we're going to be potholing that road. I want to apologize to people that the road there are some potholes in the road, but we're potholing it. We're going to pothole these roads. We are potholing it. But if they didn't waste $118 million on St. Jude, all these roads will be potholed. That money that they throw away on St. Jude, that money that they use for political retribution, if they had completed the People's Hospital, when they had the money, $89 million were available. They wasted it in the box. The roads in St. Lucia would be in a better state. So, Mr. Speaker, I want you to visit the original buildings, and you'll see the transformation in these buildings already, Mr. Speaker. The transformation. And a friend of mine went there, and he said tears came to his eyes when he said, why would a government be so callous to allow these buildings to get in that situation just because you want to pay political retribution? I want you to go there, Mr. You can see. So where we are now, we've cleaned the buildings, we've got them ready. All the original plans, these plans are being put together. We'll send them to the DCA for approval, staged approval, and work will continue, Mr. Speaker. Work will continue. The fencing will start as soon as the fencing material has arrived. We have formed a steering committee. We formed the management committee, Mr. Speaker, and work is going to continue. By the end of this year, you'll have seen significant work being done on that as well. By the end of this year, Mr. Speaker. And I'm not going to speak about dates, but I can tell you all things being equal, with the help of God, the people of St. Lucia will be in the St. Jude Hospital in the shortest possible time. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, be it resolved that the Parliament of St. Lucia acknowledges receipt of the report of the St. Jude Hospital Reconstruction Project Review Committee, hereinafter referred to as the Review Committee, and expresses its profound thanks and gratitude to the members of the Review Committee for their sterling contribution, diligence, and selfless dedication in completing the report. That the Parliament of St. Lucia do advise the Cabinet of Ministers to consider and approve the recommendations presented by the Review Committee for the completion and commissioning of the St. Jude Hospital to facilitate the move and transfer of operations from the George Odlum National Stadium to the original St. Jude Hospital site. That the Parliament of St. Lucia do advise the Cabinet of Ministers to explore other sustainable opportunities for the St. Jude Hospital site. That the Parliament of St. Lucia, cognizant of the distressing conditions of the St. Jude Hospital at the George Odlum National Stadium, further expresses its profound gratitude to the doctors, nurses, staff, and patients for their contribution, dedication, patience, and commitment over the years. The member for Soufrière-Fonsèjac.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the motion on St. Jude in its entirety, which was moved by the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Economic Affairs, Youth Economy, National Security, and Justice, and the member for Castries East. Mr. Speaker, I'm inclined to believe that every St. Lucian, red, yellow, blue, and those with no color, those at home and abroad, young and old, those from the north and those from the south, every St. Lucian would like to see the St. Jude Hospital completed and delivering the highest quality of health care to all who enters its gates. Mr. Speaker, when I engage my constituents on the ground, from Fonsèjac to Belvedere to Wavinclair to Bouton to Barons Drive to Palmis, there is overwhelming support and empathy for St. Jude's. It is correct to say, Mr. Speaker, that the man and woman on the streets of St. Lucia understands the importance of St. Jude as a primary health institution in this country. It is also correct to say, Mr. Speaker, that most of us have either directly or indirectly use the services of St. Jude Hospital or have a friend or family that have used the facility. For me personally, my deceased mom, my deceased uncle, my two brothers, and one of my workers have received quality care from St. Jude Hospital. So, Mr. Speaker, with so much support and empathy on the ground for St. Jude, why are we debating this motion today, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I believe, and most times when I sit here, and in particularly for this debate, I try to use my auditor's hat. So I sit and I watch what is happening in the mirror. And today I am not even speaking as a politician. I'm speaking as a St. Lucian, but I want to speak as an auditor, Mr. Speaker. Notwithstanding the overwhelming support and empathy for St. Jude Hospital, the man on the street and the woman on the street have burning questions up to this day that require answers. And some of the questions that are being asked, Mr. Speaker, why 13 years after a devastating fire, this hospital that serves almost 70,000 St. Lucians remain unfinished or incomplete? Why, after spending some $98.5 million in 2016 by the St. Lucia Labour Party administration then on that hospital, would a United Workers' Party administration start a completely new structure? Why, after spending some $300 million on this project, patients are still being housed at the George Odlum National Stadium? Why, after receiving grants and donations from 8 countries, from St. Lucians locally here and overseas, totaling some approximately $41 million, are we stuck with 2 unfinished structures? Why the United Workers' Party administration did no work on St. Jude's between the years 2016 and 2019? Why did the United Workers' Party administration destroy 2 structurally sound buildings costing some $7 million? And what happened to the equipment? Approximately $30 million worth of equipment and material that was left by the St. Lucia Labour Party administration. Mr. Speaker, so these are some of the questions that persons present to me day after day. So I believe it is absolutely necessary to have this debate, and I believe that the various speakers will provide the people of St. Lucia responses to those questions. And as I sat and listened and I look around this room, I am seeing at least 2 former prime ministers who are involved in this project. And as I sat and listened to our current prime minister, and I tried to put myself in the position of the man on the street listening to this debate. And the Honorable Prime Minister has presented what I would say is a shocking story. The litany of woes in terms of how the last administration technically, whether we like it or not, mismanaged the funds of this country.
That's right.
Technically, that is what has happened. I'm saying technically, based on the information here, and the minister presented and he's presenting contracts, he's reading from documents that is open to the public. Technically, the last administration has mismanaged the resources, the limited resources of this country. Mr. Speaker, we are having this debate because healthcare is a national priority. We should have this debate because healthcare is a national imperative. We are having this debate because St. Jude plays a vital role in our healthcare system. It serves about 40% of our population. We are having this debate because St. Jude is a national healthcare institution. And as a result of this, St. Jude is a national priority. We are having this debate as a means of educating the public on the status of this critical national project. We are having this debate because a national imperative must receive the undivided and focused attention of the people's representatives in this august body. We are having this debate because a national health imperative must receive the attention of the nation. It must receive the attention of all the people. We are having this debate because this national imperative must be embraced by all the people. Red, yellow, blue, young, the elderly, and the not so young. And I see us having this debate almost as a truth commission. We must have this debate because as a government and as a people, we must be accountable to the people of the country. We must be transparent in the things we do, why we do it, and how we do it. And I believe we must have this debate so we can learn of the things that we ought not to do in the future, Mr. Speaker. So we are having this debate to bring the attention of the people that a health imperative can only be achieved when, as a government and as a people, we make collective sacrifices and efforts, but more than this, we are deliberate in how we use the resources of our people. So, Mr. Speaker, for our current contractors, because our Honorable Prime Minister has indicated that work has started on this recommence on St. Jude's, what is the sacrifice that our current contractors and staff must make? They must see themselves as in a privileged situation. Their labor in completing St. Jude Hospital must be a labor of love. There must be a sense of purpose, efficiency, and pride. But more than anything else, Mr. Speaker, our past contractors and the staff must also do their part. Based on what we've heard, should any of them have walked away with the equipments and material that belong to this project, they should do the right thing, Mr. Speaker. They should do the right thing. They should redeem themselves by returning them. Because this project is costing us significant amount of money as a country. Likewise, Mr. Speaker, the citizens must do their part by making collective sacrifices. And that is for them to understand that the completion of St. Jude's may delay repairs to our road network. And the Honorable Prime Minister did speak on that, Mr. Speaker. So as we have that debate, I want us to face the realities of how this St. Jude's project has impacted the lives of each and every one of us. Mr. Speaker, as we speak of sacrifices, let me acknowledge the staff of St. Jude. Let me acknowledge that the staff of St. Jude's have played their part.
Disappear when they believe they'll be called upon to account. And those who are prepared to face the challenge will sit here and participate in this debate. But there are many more occasions when they'll run away and keep running away. Take your ball and go. Mr. Speaker, let me just establish the backdrop of today's presentation. On Monday, 19th April 2010, addressing this honorable Parliament as Prime Minister then, I said, Madam Speaker, September 9, 2009 was a sad day in St. Lucia's history when the St. Jude Hospital, a major referral hospital located in Vieux-Fort, was devastated by fire, leaving its patients out in the cold. This fire destroyed the surgical ward and the operating theaters of an already aging plant, resulting in significant and major disruptions and termination of services in the south of the island. The George Odlum Stadium has been temporarily converted to a hospital, We are cognizant of the inconveniences caused to our many sports enthusiasts around the island. Madam Speaker, the St. Jude Hospital provides a number of inpatient, outpatient, ancillary, and outreach care. Government has taken a policy decision to reconstruct St. Jude's Hospital. Of great importance also is the location of Heronora International Airport in the south of the island, which requires that there be access to emergency medical and surgical services on a 24-hour basis. This, Mr. Speaker, was a prelude to articulating the vision then as Prime Minister for the reconstruction of St. Jude Hospital and an overall plan for health development in this country. At the time, Mr. Speaker, I was very passionate for a number of reasons that St. Jude has provided an unparalleled contribution to health in this country. Many people, whether in the south or in the north, went to St. Jude for services, and many occasions they felt it was the best you can ever experience. And it is because of that record, because of that legacy of St. Jude, as Prime Minister then, I felt we could not have left the people of the South, neither the people of St. Lucia, without St. Jude. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I indicated that it was the government intention then to reconstruct the surgical building on the old site using funds allocated by the Taiwanese government of US $2 million. This building will be able to provide a maximum of 32 beds. It will also house all critical services and be made fully functional to allow St. Jude Hospital to relocate from the stadium and operate until the new facility is built on the new site. This, Mr. Speaker, is an indication of the need at the time to return to the old site as soon as possible within the shortest possible time. This would also make it possible for the stadium to be returned to the sports community, which has demonstrated much patience and understanding so far. The reconstruction of the surgical building is expected to take 6 months. That was my expectation. That was my hope. That was my dream. It was never intended to take 14 years. And we'll tell you why it took 14 years. The component will commence on May 2010. By May 2010, and be ready by October 2010. That's how ambitious, Mr. Speaker, at that time I was. Then, number 2, construct a new 90-bed healthcare facility for St. Jude Hospital at a new site near George Odlum Stadium. The planning and design phase of this component is expected in 6 months. Mr. Speaker, what at the time we were thinking was that while we reconstruct the burnt-out section and rehabilitate the balance of the buildings with the asbestos, etc., the aging building, that down the road, the intention was, with the national vision plan for the country, to build a modern facility for St. Jude and enter into what we call a partnership, a private-public partnership, to get that facility going. Mr. Speaker, I further elaborated on this aspect in 2011 when I said the government of St. Lucia remains committed to the reconstruction of St. Jude Hospital to a facility which not only allows for the original services to be reinstated. So in my view, Mr. Speaker, then as Prime Minister, it was always the intention to remain in the facility, to rebuild it, to reconstruct it, but also to allow for the expansion and growth to meet growing needs of St. Lucians and our Caribbean family. It was always my intention as Prime Minister and as a policy of the then government to go into the original infrastructure, go into that original hospital and to rebuild it. The government is pleased to note that reconstruction work on the original site is progressing smoothly and is expected to be completed by the last quarter of this year. And an amount of $23.7 million is provided for in the budget to meet reconstruction. Mr. Speaker, at that time, the overall expenditure was estimated at $60 million, with $23.7 million being allocated in the budget of 2010-2011. But Mr. Speaker, what has happened? So here it is, a UWP government which I led, and on the 9th of September, when that great fire occurred, I traveled that very morning to Vieux-Fort to be witnessed and to be involved in the actual operations of rescuing whatever we were able to rescue in Vieux-Fort. It was on that night, that morning, the 10th, that we took the decision of finding a location after looking at the Vieux-Fort Secondary School, Vieux-Fort Comprehensive School, and the stadium, to decide to go into the stadium immediately and do the necessary makeshift operations to allow them to get inside there. But time would roll on, Mr. Speaker. Time would roll on. The then opposition, now government, at the time, did their thing of asking for the project to be completed. Works went on, and then in 2011, November 2011, we lost the election. The amazing thing, Mr. Speaker, was having lost the election, the then Prime Minister Kenny Anthony didn't vacillate, didn't stop, didn't reconsider. He continued the project with the same contractor, with the same plans, with the intention to deliver this hospital to the people of St. Lucia. So you see, Mr. Speaker, some of us come here and we posture. We play politics. We are expedient in our behavior, but we don't have the people at heart in this country. We do not have the people's interest at heart. Dr. Anthony, as Prime Minister, with the Minister Alvina Reynolds, took the decision as a government then, and I was proud of them. I was proud because I said, here is a plan developed by a political organization headed by me in government, unable to complete it at the time, and without a doubt continued with the arrangements that was in place with the intention of following my own vision of remaining in the same structure, the old St. Jude Hospital. The government held on to the contractor. The contractor that we engaged, the government held on to him and continued with that contractor all the way in the year, I believe it was 2013 or 14. Endured with him. Notwithstanding difficulties and problems, endured with him. But let me just fast forward. So in June 6, is it? 2021, June 6, 2016, the then government, the United Workers' Party government, or the United Workers' Party, won the election. Won the election. Within quick time, they abandoned the project. Within quick time, I'm not even too sure it was 3 months, I have the details there, but I'll come back to that. Abandoned the project, dismissed the then contractor, and decided they needed to undertake an investigation. Mr. Speaker, in that last government, and sometimes people say, well, you know, don't talk about the things you experienced in the last government, etc., etc. And the reason why the honorable member for Choiseul never saw the report is because the report was never shared with him. It was not shared with anybody in the cabinet, Mr. Speaker. So how could he have seen it? How could he have seen it except a PowerPoint presentation with no details? So he could not have seen it. He can't stand on a point of order because it's a fact. Okay, it's a fact. So, Mr. Speaker, we got in, a project abandoned, and then there was supposed to be a technical audit. I will say one thing here today. It was the first and the last time I think I acted as Prime Minister, because I was called upon to sign off on a direct award for $1 million, 960,000 or thereabout, and I refused to do it. I said, I am not putting my signature on this. But Mr. Speaker, the audit which was done was more or less was presented, and in that audit they indicated that they didn't have information, that no information was given to them. But I have here, Mr. Speaker, and I'll hold it like a very well-known gentleman. I have a letter here, Mr. Speaker, dated 14 September 2016. And that letter is addressed to Ms. Tracy Polius. And the reason I'm doing this, Mr. Speaker, because, you know, I think it is Distillers Limited who says the missing cast. Is it? The missing cast, the missing barrel or something so? The missing report, Mr. Speaker. That's the one that was never found, they claim. But the letter addressed to Tracy Polius, Mr. Speaker, it's subject, hand over, you'll get a report. I can give you 2 reports because 2 of you are there. Mr. Speaker, the letter states, hand over report St. Jude Hospital reconstruction project. Reference is made to my previous email communication on the above caption, and they said they never got emails from the lady. My previous email communication on the above caption. Please find attached handover report with respect to the St. Jude Hospital reconstruction project. Please note that this represents my final deliverable as per my contracted services to the government of St. Lucia, which concluded on 14th August 2016. That's when they fired her. 14th August 2016, that's when she concluded the service. So they fired her. They fired her, and maybe it's because she has my same namesake. So they fired her, Mr. Speaker, and let me say this is not my sister. She carries the same name. I have not done any investigation to see if there is any relationship. But she stood her ground and lived up to her expectation and preserved her reputation by concluding her task of deliverables. Please note that I am willing and available to provide any clarification on the attached report or any other related matter. Please feel free to contact me via email if required. This is the lady they claim they cannot get her. They cannot get into her email. They cannot get this. They have been trying. They tried to get hold of her. She's saying, please feel free to come. On the 14th of September. No, the letter was dated 14th September 2016, but her term came to an end 14th August 2016. I wish the government of St. Lucia all the best in the completion of this important project. Thank you for your anticipated cooperation. I look forward to an acknowledgement of receipt from you at your earliest convenience. They said they never got the report. You want a copy of this letter? Okay. You'll have it. You'll get the report too. And if you want any more reports, let me know. I'll tell you which section of the library to go and pick it up. So, Mr. Speaker, so here it is, she has delivered her report, and I think it's important that somebody goes into that report and pick up a few things to see exactly the extent to which the report was prepared. She gave a background of the project. She spoke about the steps which were taken immediately upon the fire in terms of relocation. And in there, she said, as a result of the damage to the components of an already aged facility, the government of St. Lucia took an initial policy decision to rebuild the St. Jude Hospital. This was necessary in order to restore the capacity of the southern region to facilitate the healthcare needs of the population in the south, as well as clients from the north, which includes almost 66,000 patrons. She went on further, Mr. Speaker, in her report about the St. Jude Hospital reconstruction. And she said the design was, the goal of the project initiated was to rebuild St. Jude Hospital to reinstate the core and the ancillary health services. And then quoted some of the steps in which I had articulated moving forward. In there, short-term solution, temporary accommodation for St. Jude Hospital, which is what we did. This would entail the reconstruction of the surgical building on the old site, as well as renovation of the other two buildings, etc., etc. The facilities would be made fully functional to allow St. Jude Hospital to relocate from the stadium and operate until the new facility is built. So notwithstanding all of the delays, even though the Kenny Anthony administration had continued and made adjustments to the design and the purpose of the old St. Jude facility, notwithstanding that, that project was well on the way to completion. That project was well on the way to completion. But vindictiveness, political vindictiveness, they decided, let us stop it and let us try and find red herrings among the crew, among those involved. Well, I don't know if you call it a cash cow or ATM, but I'm not too sure what it was. So, Mr. Speaker, she articulated the policy of the government completing St. Jude, and then the medium-term solution, the construction of a new healthcare facility for St. Jude Hospital on a new site. That was what was left behind for them in 2016 when they shut down the project. From 2011, after losing the election, to 2016, the project continued, unhindered, unimpeded. And a plan was left in place for the continuation of the project. The most important thing is to remove them out of the George Odlum Stadium. I have not seen the full report from FDL, like the member for Choiseul Saltibus has not seen it, because it was never shared with us. what they came with was a PowerPoint presentation in which they presented to the cabinet then what they felt they wanted the cabinet to consume. So they said, well, the corridor is too small, a gurney cannot go through the corridor. They made all sorts of allegations and insinuations. And I remember at that meeting, I don't know if the gentleman can remember, when I said at the end of the presentation, there's an onslaught on the professionalism of too many people, that this report should not stop there. If you believe what you have put in there is correct, do the necessary forensic investigation if you believe. But when you read the report, Mr. Speaker, and the details of this report, you wonder why an honest man, any honest individual, although there are very few over there, but you wonder why any honest individual, Mr. Speaker, would have received a report in such detailed form. And I'm sure if Bradley had seen it, he probably would have made some noise. He probably would have joined me. You understand? He read it too late. So if only, Mr. Speaker, if an individual looks at a handover report, you got it in your hand. You must have read it. You ignored it. You hid it. You probably tried to shred it, but couldn't succeed because the report is there. It was handed over to you. The business of the people placed in your hand to deliver to them the health care services. And you ignore it? And you expect me to sit down there and just accept this? Mr. Speaker, in that report they said that all the buildings of the facility were stripped. That's the old St. Jude Hospital. All the buildings were stripped completely, leaving in some cases only external concrete walls. Now they needed to do that because it was a total reconstruction. My technical colleague here on the other side, on my side, will agree with me. The renovation works also facilitated a reconfiguration of the hospital layout to improve the delivery of services. Working. Now, Mr. Speaker, one of the things you must anticipate in any structure, any as-built structure, okay, I'm using the right term, right? Yes. Any as-built structure, Mr. Speaker, reconstruction will obviously cost a little more than total construction from the ground.
That's right.
Because it is more difficult, you have to gut, you have to strip, you have to reconstruct. That's it will take more time, it will take more money. Okay? That's right. So they said, so in that, Mr. Speaker, and it is said the renovation works also facilitated a reconfiguration of the hospital layout to improve the delivery of services. In some areas, an extension of building area was facilitated. The renovation works for all buildings included new roofing system with fire protection, new electrical installation, new plumbing installation, new hot water installation, specialized flooring systems, new elevator installation, new furniture and equipment, new modern medical equipment. They never saw this, Mr. Speaker. That's what they said. They never saw it. So what were they doing? What were they doing? Looking for ways and means to do what? Mr. Speaker, I didn't say this, Mr. Speaker, but additional work components also included. The additional work components: supply and installation of medical gas lines to patient areas. And if you knew St. Jude, Mr. Speaker, and even Victoria Hospital, Mr. Speaker, in the old construction of those medical facilities, medical gases are provided on a tank, from a tank, a cylinder. Yes. In this facility, they're saying we ruling out cylinders of oxygen and other gases, and we're going to provide it in the patient area. They also said that these are additional works, Mr. Speaker: supply and installation of fire alarms, renovation of building and dialysis services, and installation of relevant equipment, construction of a chapel and counseling room. Now, you know, in one of their reports, Mr. Speaker, they said that they couldn't find any information for the chapel. But in the very report here, Mr. Speaker, the report is saying that because of the long-standing religious relationship between St. Jude and the Sisters of the Sorrowful Mother, and by extension later on the Mercy Hospital, that chapel was being built from donations. And they gave, in the report, there's a list of donations of persons who donated material for the construction of the chapel to maintain its connection, you know, with the culture of prayers and healing and all of this thing based on Roman Catholic traditions. But they claim they couldn't find it. Okay? Then it continues, Mr. Speaker. Supply and installation of a 25,000 Imperial gallon water treatment plant. Supply and installation of ventilation. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on. In this report here, the handover report, which they conveniently didn't see. On that occasion, what they did, they took off the glasses and put on a wooden glass. So they couldn't see anything, and they claimed that there was no report. Then the report speaks of revised policy direction against 2011. They spoke about the revised policy direction moving forward. Project management. They said the Department of Economic Development is the government agency responsible for the planning and implementation of this project. A project management unit was set up in February of 2010. The main responsibilities of the PME is to facilitate the planning and implementation of St. Jude Hospital reconstruction project. But what do you think happened, Mr. Speaker? And they list the names of the individuals who formed the project planning, the project management unit. Okay? A project management unit which moved from one administration to the next, from a UWP administration to a SLP administration, comprising the permanent secretary. And here are the names of the people. I can mention the names. I know the Prime Minister don't like mentioning names, but these are responsible men and women who serve the government. Okay, Reginald Darius, Isaac Anthony, okay, who were permanent secretaries. Now they're trying to rope him into the commerce. Then you have Corinthia Thomas, Barnabas Anius, and Felix St. Hill. Janet Bernard, another permanent secretary, John Calix, Percival MacDonald, Lucius Elivic, Sherry Poyot, Zeister Edmonds, a health planner of repute, Kerry Joseph, Anthony Filges, Nicole Jean-Jacques, Nadia Wells, and Shanta King. And when they came in, what did they do? They disbanded the project management unit. They disbanded it, Mr. Speaker, because they needed to have their own way. The report that went missing. Then, Mr. Speaker, the report speaks about project financing. The following highlights donations and contributions received on behalf of St. Jude Hospital. Grants from the government of the Republic of Taiwan, $22,500,034. Government of Australia, $1,092,590. Grant from the government of Mexico, $7,144,941. Grant from the government of Germany, $2,087,195. Grant from the government of Israel, $40,317. Grant from the Republic of India, $672,000. Donation of medical equipment from Hess Corporation, $2.716,900,000. And then went on, donation of medical equipment from the government of the United States of America, $2,716,900. Total local cash donations and donations from overseas individual organizations, $2.061 million. A total contribution of $41 million, Mr. Speaker. $41 million in donations. And you got an opportunity, after 5 years in opposition, to regain government. You got an opportunity to continue the project, and you suspended the project for 3 years. For 3 years. And you tell the people of this country you care about them? How can you care about them when you had an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to show them, practically show them that you care, instead of going around the place parading with T.O.R. King all over the world? you know, showing renderings of a thing that will never happen because Tiwa King had no money. What he came to do, he was to suck the blood of this country, Mr. Speaker. That was what it was, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sorry I'm saying this, but you know, after all of this, you go all parading. In the plan for the South, Mr. Speaker, the pearl, what? Pearl of the Caribbean. Now, you know the pearl of the Caribbean is the Virgin Islands, eh? He didn't even know that. Let me have some water, please. Now, you know, if a developer comes to me, Mr. Speaker, and I'm Prime Minister, and you want to put up all these elaborate plans, I will say to you, what's your social contribution? What is your social contribution? Saukabai. And I would tell them what I want. Let me give you an example, Mr. Speaker. When in the former administration as Minister responsible for port services, we hired a company from the Netherlands, I think it was, to construct Point Serafin. And I said to them, you need to make a social contribution. And I tell him the school that I needed them to do. And all I said to them, put the foundation down for me, because the children in that school need better facilities. The foundation went down. I called on another local contractor. I said, get to one floor, another one get to the roof, and today a brand new building is standing with 6 classrooms for the children of this country. That's what people do who care about people. And I know many of us here on this side, go out there and look for the people of this country. So in that plan for the south of the island, Mr. Speaker, with all the renderings, all the designs, all the imaginations of islands emerging all of a sudden and disappearing when the people make noise, all kinds of things, Mr. Speaker, just to blue the people of this country, Mr. Speaker. Not once in that plan did the Prime Minister then say, I need you to build a hospital for the people of this country. Nowhere in this plan, nowhere. In all of the horse race track, Mr. Speaker, nothing there as a gift to the people of the country. But we're moving on, Mr. Speaker, because the people of this country are not fools. No matter what they do, I see now, Mr. Speaker, there are people all of a sudden who call themselves hotel workers are writing letters about conditions of road. They should have put it on the leader of the opposition's letterhead. Because that's where it originated. You know, put it on the leader of the opposition's letterhead. Making statements they can't. Now, you know one problem, Mr. Speaker? They try to impersonate. They try to use all kind of fictitious names. Okay? But the language doesn't change. It's the same language. So, Mr. Speaker, I continue with this report, which goes into tremendous detail about every contribution. It details every contract, every single contract, Mr. Speaker, which was signed, given a report, etc., and they speak of the prime ministers who serve. Mr. Speaker, the total project expenditure up to the financial year 2016-2017, and that expenditure, Mr. Speaker, is from 2011 to 2016, in fact 2009 up to 2016-2017, July 31, 2016. It states everything. The expenditure in the year of 2009 to 2010, 2010 to 2011, 2011 to 2012, it goes down and it totals $98 million. So, Mr. Speaker, my presence here today, Mr. Speaker, is to state one thing. That we as individuals, and also, Mr. Speaker, in the report, it speaks to the challenges, the many challenges, the unavailable unavailability of adequate resources, but the various decisions taken by the then Prime Minister, Anthony, etc., you know, the involvement of the IFC counterpart, and a number of initiatives undertaken, Mr. Speaker, all articulated and listed there. But somebody, Mr. Speaker, who didn't like the head of the project manager because they felt the project manager may have wronged them, decided that we can't find that report. We will not include the report, and let us go after them and do an investigation that will pin them down. Well, the investigation proved nothing, absolutely nothing, okay? It also went on, Mr. Speaker, about the ongoing challenges with the main contractor at the time, and the reason why they needed to change that contractor and bring in a new contractor, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, in all of this report is the biggest spectacle ever. The biggest spectacle ever. Equipment and material storage. You remember that, Mr. Speaker? Remember when there was this big event and the minister is spearheading a squad? Okay? You know him very well. I don't have to tell you. But, you know, a minister spearheading a squad with police to go and pick up equipment where the equipment was located. The report, Mr. Speaker, speaks to all of these things. It says there, during the implementation of the project, it became necessary to store construction materials and associated equipment. All materials and equipment stored are the responsibility of the relevant contractors until incorporated into the works or installed. And the reason for this, Mr. Speaker, was that there was some equipment that was offered to the government of St. Lucia at discounted rates, and they could not have held it until such time. So they said, listen, you take the equipment. We're giving it to you at a percentage discount. Take it over. There wasn't sufficient space, so what happened? The contractors were supposed to store it. Medical equipment procured through the project currently in storage include equipment supplied by Haldier Construction Company Limited. The storage of equipment and furniture from this company was communicated to the project steering committee. Okay? And they said, refer to minutes of meeting number 12. The equipment in storage has been reviewed periodically by the consultant. So, Mr. Speaker, all of this is there. But they must point finger. They must go and attack. They must do all of this sort of thing because they must find blood somehow or the other. It says that over the last 2.5 years, there have been a number of requests for St. Jude Hospital being aware of the equipment in storage. Based on the requests from the St. Jude Hospital, a number of pieces of equipment have been transferred further to approval of the Permanent Secretary and Deputy Permanent Secretary. So how could the then government, under the leadership of the guy, under the leadership of the Honorable Alan Chasney, claim that they couldn't find equipment, they couldn't find materials, whereas in this handover report prepared by the project manager, it tells you everywhere, every piece of equipment. Now, when an individual or individuals behave in that kind of manner, you cannot trust them. The people of St. Lucia must not trust them. And that is why they have injunctions against them. They're not trustworthy. They're not trustworthy. Mr. Speaker, we move on, and a lot was said about accreditation and all of this, about the hospital as being built without plans. He spoke about accreditation and all of this sort of thing. But, Mr. Speaker, in here, and my colleague to my left indicated that she worked with Accreditation Canada. It says there, when the decision was taken to reconstruct St. Jude Hospital, it was understood that the facility upon transfer and once operational would be seeking accreditation. In this regard, a decision was made by the project steering committee that the project management unit would have dialogue with Accreditation Canada, a recognized institution, would have dialogue with Accreditation Canada to obtain information for commencement of the process. Over the years, we have been having dialogue with Accreditation Canada to develop a roadmap for accreditation. It was clear that the actual process of accreditation could not commence before the hospital was transferred. However, proposals were received from Accreditation Canada for the commencement of the accreditation process, which was scheduled for February 2017. All of that work was being done, Mr. Speaker. Accreditation, you know, the whole issue of planning permission, all of that was going on. But to try and plant and to extract, they had to say, hide this report, because if we have a report and we share the report, there's nothing on which we must stand on. Development control, Mr. Speaker, it is all outlined here. All the development control matters are outlined here. But somewhere, Mr. Speaker, I have a letter from the chairman of the Development Control Authority, which was sent then to the PS. And apparently, again, maybe something wasn't going wrong, and the DCA needed to get things right, to put it right. So they've probably called upon them, and the meeting comprised Minister, DCA, PS department, chairman of the DCA, etc., and the chairman of the DCA, many of you would have known then. Okay? So, that one, we'll get there. At that meeting, the chairman agreed that FDL would undertake the following. Submit to the DCA. Now, that is in 2020, Mr. Speaker. From 2016, 2016, you are on a, well, first and foremost, you stopped it. You stopped it for 3 years, etc. Trying all kinds of things. Now, I want to speak about, anyway, I'll get to the box. So you stopped the project, and then in 2020, the DCA, the chairman of the DCA at that meeting is saying that you must undertake the following. Submit to the DCA professional indemnity insurance for the development. You must have insurance. Yeah. You cannot have people working on the site and you have no insurance. You have to cover them. Submit to the DCA all approved packages from the relevant agencies, fire, health, electrical, and MEP, after dialogue and meetings with the agencies. So up to that point, none of that was done. And then in there it is said, upon the conclusion of the discussions on all the areas of concern emanating from the application, there was consensus among all parties present at the meeting. The chairman of the DCA agreed to have the architectural component package stamped and signed without architectural certification, and indicated that the liability would be left to the designer. Shortcut. Stamp it, sign it without certification, and the liability will be to the designer. These are some of the things this guy allowed.
Which guy?
The guy. Mr. Speaker, the report went on even further to outline all of the outstanding payments to contractors, all. But what is very, and I should say encouraging, Mr. Speaker, when this government came in, okay? When this government came in, not this government, when the Kenny Anthony government came in, the contractor was held and all subcontractors kept. All. Not one subcontractor was fired. Not one. So, Mr. Speaker, I have gone into this report, and let me give you the report so that you can read. You can share it if you want. Mr. Speaker, I've gone into this because I believe the time has come in this country where politicians must stop bluffing. They must stop bluffing. And there's a term that I recall when I was growing up that used to be used. Stop flamming. Stop flamming. Come straight. Come honest. Come transparent. Come with dignity. Come with pride and a sense of patriotism to your people and your country. That is what we need in this country. So you cannot behave in a particular way. You stand here sometimes in this parliament and you behave like you're still prime minister. You're not the prime minister. Sit down. Sit down. You talk about, all sorts of things. And I think it was the prime minister who said, had you managed properly, our roads would be better. Had you controlled what was going on at Jude Hospital, where for the construction of the box you demolished a number of buildings, and then the cost of the foundation, which was estimated at $3 million, escalated to $9 million and counting, we would have had our roads fixed. You understand? Had you waited a while, and only if necessary, you would not have hoodwinked the public officers to say, realign the Larissus Road in Beaufort to facilitate the horse race track at a cost of $15 million for the taxpayers of the country to pay? $15 million? Had you saved our money, the $7 million for vaccines, our roads would be better today. The wastage of flying all over the place, spending money, $2,000 US a day, £2,000 a night, etc. Like money is no problem, problem is no money. And you believe that you stand a chance to get back into this government to manage the affairs of the country, you have been disqualified. You have been disqualified. The people have had enough in 5 years of the nonsense which went on. I'm not going to go into the fiscal things, the fiscal details of this country, where you left it at, the problems you left behind. And you have people jumping up, jumping up. They even having birthday party when you're not present. Huh? Yes. Why are they allowing themselves to be fooled? But the smarter ones are saying enough is enough. And I hope the one to his left will understand, will also realize enough is enough. But Mr. Speaker, this government came in and said, listen, we don't have any intentions of stopping any project. Not even the Rodney Bay Road development project, a total fiasco, the details of which we'll deal at another show. We don't have intentions of stopping this because as we are now, we're finalizing negotiations with the Kuwaiti government to get it done. Yeah. And we're concluding negotiations for the West Coast to get it done. But we, as responsible as we are, as transparent as we committed ourselves to be, and as committed as we are to the welfare and the well-being and prosperity of our people in our country, we will get the job done. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, the government, spearheaded by our diligent Prime Minister, who I am well pleased in, undertook to put together a review committee, not to witch hunt, but to say to the government how we intend to proceed, or the best way we intend to proceed with the development of St. Jude Hospital. As the Prime Minister has indicated, work has started. Work has started in earnest to begin the preparation for the continuation of the project. But in doing so, when you read the resolution, it is more or less clearly indicating that our commitment is to continue. First and foremost, we are thanking the people of St. Lucia, thanking those who prepared the report, and to continue with the construction of the hospital. And basically, the review committee has done the necessary work in terms of providing guidance on the way forward. And what it is going back to the original plan, the plan which was initiated by the Stevenson King administration, continued by the Kenny Anthony administration, with the necessary adjustments and improvements to the designs, and of course, affirmation of the policy of the government to continue it in that regard, and most of all, to look at the overall St. Jude Hospital complex or campus to see what else can we do as a government that is sustainable in the interest of the people of this country. That is the sort of thing we're doing in every regard. We tell you, HIA, we said, we're not stopping it. But
Member for Castries North, you have 10 minutes left.
10 minutes? Okay, thank you, sir. I'm winding on. So we said we will review what is being done, we'll review what is being done, and we'll look for the best option possible in making sure that we make the necessary savings, create the fiscal space for us to invest in positive ways. Likewise, St. Jude, this is intention. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this resolution. I want to support the Prime Minister in this initiative, and I want him to be assured of not just my support, but the support of the Department of Infrastructure, Port Services and Transport, and the Department of Physical Development and Urban Renewal. I give him total support, and I look forward to the completion of the project and, of course, the opening whenever that date is in the next 24 months or so. I thank you.
Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that this House stands suspended until 2:30.
Honourable members, the question is that this House do stand suspended until 2:30 p.m. And now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting suspended.
All right.
Commencer à 10h30 du matin avec la motion qu'on a discuté. C'est des situations après le rapport Saint-Jude. C'est un rapport qui est présenté par un comité qui est gouvernement établi pour regarder la situation de l'hôpital Saint-Jude avec un rebâtissement. Le Premier ministre qui a commencé, qui présentait une motion, il discutait un chai, il parlait un peu sur différents sujets, différents bagailles qui concernent Saint-Jude, avec aussi noté aussi même parlement pour ça c'est même parlement pour souffrir et c'est le premier qui parlait à ça et après ça nous teni nous quand nous finissons ça c'est honorable Stevenson King qui même parlement pour Castries North nous a dit il parlait à ça et qui a un rapport puisque c'est en bas lui-même il commençait les différents puis en temps il était Premier ministre. Winston?
Well, this is the first sitting of the Solution House of Assembly for
2023, and the motion before the Parliament this morning was that Parliament acknowledges the receipt of the report of the St. Jude Hospital Reconstruction Project Review Committee, hereinafter referred to as the Review Committee, and to express its profound thanks and gratitude to the members of the Review Committee for their sterling contribution, diligence, and selfless dedication in completing the report. And that's the report before the House. That's the report that's been debated here today. presented by the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance Philip J. Pierre, who was followed by the member for Soufrière Saint-Jacques in the person of the Honourable Emma Hippolyte. And before we adjourned to go to lunch, we were hearing from the member for Castries North in the person of former Prime Minister Stephenson King, who was the then Prime Minister the year that the destruction came down in St. Jude's, when it was destroyed by that infamous fire. Well, as I said before, we are adjourning until 2:30, and we'll be back at that time to continue discussion and debate on the St. Jude Hospital report. From the House of Assembly, for the time being, on behalf of the production staff here and my co-presenter in the person of Mr. Michael Gasper, I am Winston Springer, inviting you back here for 2:30. Goodbye now.